I've always wanted to do a show with women of different generations, backgrounds, and views. We call it The View.
Hello, everyone. This is The View History. Welcome. My name is Sarah Kellison. I am the host of this podcast / show. I wasn't sure if I was going to do it, but I got a drink. I'm going to sit down. We're going to finally have a conversation about everything that is going on with ABC's daytime talk show, The View. So I've never really done like a full podcast like by myself, a solo podcast. So my apologies if this is a mess, but we're going to just go through various topics of ABC's daytime show, The View, and like talk about View history a little bit, because I was like, I don't know how I'm going to do this. I don't know if it's going to be like how it's going to be different from everyone else's podcasts, because I know a lot of people love to have a conversation about The View, so I get it. There's just so much to talk about that I just can't contain with myself. So, yeah, so let's get started on this. So, we'll probably do like 10 episodes of this, but we'll see if people really love it. I have no idea if anyone's gonna listen or if people are going to like listen and then just tune out completely, but we'll see how this goes. I'm a bit nervous, but I'm also excited, so I didn't know how to approach this, but pretty much I'll just do a segment of each thing I'm gonna talk about today. I'm gonna talk about some things from the past and some things that are currently in the present of the show. And I think, you know, that way I can keep it fresh and everything. So let's just get into it. So the first thing I wanted to talk about with you guys today is we're going to talk about View Past a little bit here. And something that is big to me, and since this is the first episode, we're going to talk about co-host introductions. So I was actually really thinking about just, you know, introducing myself. Like I just go around here and just come with my drink and just, you know, that'd be a very just like, I would need a smoke machine for that. I would need more production value, but I really tried my best here. So, so what I have for you, question of the day, in case you didn't know, question of the day is kind of like a View segment that was in the beginning of the show, in the incarnation of the show originally. And it was kind of like, just like how, you know, how Whoopi has those topics. The way she frames it is like a question, so technically it is question of the day still, but they don't say question of the day.
And so I guess we should do the question of the day, especially today. This one is special because it was sent in by a woman named Shirley Byard of Trenton, New Jersey, who watches it on WABC, and especially because that's my mother.
It's your mom.
She is now programming the show and calling me every day, and this is her question.
Okay.
What was the most embarrassing thing your parents ever did to you?
Look at that. Send her a question like that.
For my question of the day is, who had the most iconic co-host introduction? Meaning when they got to be co-host, like for new co-hosts, who had the most iconic intro? So I brought it down. I have 3, maybe 4, actually, now that I think about it. But I had 3 in mind that I really loved. And so 3 that stood out to me is the first one being Lisa Ling being asked if she was a virgin the first day she was like co-hosting the show ever. And it was in March 1999. And sorry about that. And she was pretty much just there to guest co-host, actually. It wasn't like her official introduction. She was just there to guest co-host that day. And the ladies were asking her who she is and everything. And she said that she went she was in local news originally before The View, and she also for Channel 1, and she also said that she went across the board and did coverage in different areas of the world like Afghanistan and such. And then Meredith poses the question on TV, and mind you, this is like 1999. This isn't like now where it's like whatever. But Meredith Vieira, the iconic queen, icon, everyone's television mother, asked if she was a virgin.
Some very contentious parts of the world like Afghanistan and Algeria and Colombia. So
Why?
It sounds
No, I have a better question. Are you a virgin? We have to get to what matters. First, let's get to what's important for The View.
You know, I'd rather go to Kosovo at this point than
Answer that question.
But then Lisa, okay, it's funny because Lisa, later on, she said on The View in 2017 that she had no idea. She said that she just said yes, even though it was a no. And she said to her conservative Asian family, that they would have her by the throat if she said that on TV, because they would be embarrassing for the family, and they were all watching. So for her, that was a very close call.
Were you actually embarrassed by the question, or not really?
I thought you were going to ask me, were you really a virgin?
I was. I know the answer to that.
Yes, I was embarrassed because I didn't think on my first day she would go there, especially with my whole Chinese family watching. I still did think I was a virgin, but yeah, it was disconcerting.
I probably, honestly, even now, if I was asked on TV if I was a virgin, I would probably say the same thing truthfully, because I'm like, don't ask me that sort of thing on TV when all my parents are watching and my family's watching, because I don't want to say that, because they're going to be like, because then you're going to get all the questions. You're going to be like, especially if your family's like Catholic and stuff, and they're going to ask, who did you do it with and everything? And you don't want to be like cornered on that later on, because there is an aftermath to it. So I understand where Miss Lisa Ling was going with that. So fair. Okay, so the next co-host introduction that stood out to me was Elizabeth Hasselbeck being chosen with like the Survivor tickets, because they were like, okay, so like with her intro, it was in paint the picture. It was November 2003. When they had that old setup with the full-on chairs before they had the chairs, the stools, they had the full-on chairs. And they did it. They introduced her in such a cool, iconic way, where since she was on Survivor before, they like voted her. She was voted off the island of Survivor. But in her intro, she was like voted onto the island of The View. So I loved that intro. I think the production value was fabulous, because they like had a smoke machine. Like they went all out with it. Like this was, okay, I get that that's not like the biggest thing, but in 2003 it is, okay? Like for daytime in 2003, that was a big deal. Because the production value was really high up with that. Like, I think them having a smoke machine and her turning around and be like, yes, bitch, I got on, I made it and everything. I think that was an iconic moment, and I wish they would and I love the spotlight, and I love that everyone had their like little Survivor ticket of who they're voting onto the island of Elizabeth.
Today is the big day, finally announcing The View's new co-host.
I thought that was like the best intro a co-host has ever had, truthfully, because like I feel they should introduce co-hosts like that, because I love the build up to that. I love the promo for it. Like let's go all out with this. Let's do this. Like let's introduce you. Like, you are part of The View now. Let's make it a big deal. And I feel they haven't really, they've had like some really good intros and stuff. Like, I think they had some decent intros, but nothing to this level of production. It's all about the production value. And I really think for the next co-host, they should do something like this, where there's a spotlight and they have them just turn around, like in a different part of the room, and have a smoke machine going. And depending on the type of co-host, they should make a theme for it depending on their background, just like they did with Elizabeth, because I think that would be very cool. And like for instance, they could like, for today, they could have all the current co-hosts like do like a ballot thing where they like have a box and it's like their vote. Since the show's so political now, they have the co-hosts like write in a name, and then, or they like have like a voting list or something, and they show it to everyone prior, like it's an election or something. And then they have the co-hosts put in a ballot, and then Whoopi draws the ballot and see how many votes are for a certain co-host, and they just do it like that. Like, that would be my idea. That would be the best idea. But they can also do it based on a background, depending on who the co-host is, if didn't come from a political background necessarily. My third favorite View co-host introduction is Rosie O'Donnell starting, "Hi, I'm Meredith Vieira, and welcome to The View." Like, that was Rosie's tribute to Meredith, truthfully. Like, she knew what she was getting into, and she knew what our audience she was targeting. So I think that was amazing for her to do that on her first day.
What's all the fuss about?
Well, it's about our new set. What do you think? Isn't it nice?
And we changed the color.
Yes. Not only did we choose the color, we said we don't want it to look like someone's grandmother's living room anymore.
By the way,
Because you remember the old set was kind of beige and kind of, I didn't enjoy it.
you didn't. Do you think there's anyone who does not know that maybe we should introduce you, or is that unnecessary?
Okay, my name is Meredith Vieira, and welcome to The View.
I also, there's this promo that she did, because people already knew prior that Rosie was going to be on the show, before her first day, of course. And she did this like musical with her, Barbara, Joy, and Elizabeth. And they were all singing, and it was like a Broadway musical. And I think that was so cool as well, like just that promo and intro. And I wish they would I feel they could do that, but take it to the next levels.
I'm friends with Madonna, Alec Baldwin too. But when you're friends with Barbara, she puts you on The View.
We're starting up a brand new year. Wait till we begin.
I'm loud, opinionated, crass. Sure that you'll fit in.
This year's kind of different.
Got a brand new crew. But there's one thing that's certain. We're shaking up The View.
Don't give up your day job.
One more co-host introduction. The closest that I think they did to getting the Elizabeth thing was when Megan came to The View, because when she came, I remember in the intro, they had like the seat spotlighted, like the 5th seat spotlighted, saying, "We have picked our new co-host. Find out on today's show who it is." And then they just started. And then they started that show, and then it was so iconic. They just had the seat open, and then just Megan came out to confident. Love that. Love a walkout. I was planning to do a walkout today, but that didn't happen because I don't have the space for it.
And the wait is over, because the next chapter of View history is just seconds away when our brand new co-host takes her seat at the table.
So, the next chapter in View history. Next chapter in View history starts now, because we have a new co-host, and she's about to sit in the chair. She's a strong voice for young conservatives. Please welcome our new co-host, Meghan McCain.
The three with Lisa, Elizabeth, and Rosie, I think had the best intros. And I definitely think they should take note from the Elizabeth one to do that for the next co-host. And anyways, speaking of the next co-host, so now we're gonna talk about what's going on currently with The View. So what's going on currently is that we've been seeing for months since September, since Meghan McCain left in August. In September, they've been auditioning multiple women for the 5th seat. Now, what they're looking for specifically is they're looking for someone who's they said conservative, but it's more like right-leaning or independent perspective is what I'm getting, because with their restrictions, it kind of contradicts in a lot of way where the Conservative Party is at now, especially in Trump's era, because they said they don't want someone that's going to talk about election fraud, and they don't want someone who's going to deny that January 6th was an attack on our own people. Like, they don't want someone who's just going to speak with pure conspiracy, like nothing, no backing source to it, pretty much. And I think those are fair points because, truthfully, I don't think I could deal with someone that is gonna just talk in conspiracy. Like, there's Reddit for that sort of thing, so we don't need that. I do think they need an opposing view that is going to shake up the table a little bit, because I did feel throughout Trump era, and this is not because I agree with all that stuff or anything, I'm just saying, objectively speaking, I do feel in Trump era they needed someone who voted for Trump. They don't have to necessarily agree with his behavior, but I do feel in the act of fairness, because there were a lot of people that voted for him. I mean, even the last election, he got 70 million votes. And we can't deny that reality, because that is the true reality, whether we like it or not. I feel that the person doesn't have to condone the behavior. We don't need him. We don't need them to defend the behavior necessarily. But I do think they need to defend the policy and back that pretty much. Because realistically, that party is under the influence of Donald Trump at the moment. That could change in the future. Like, if Liz Cheney gets in, that's going to change the game for everyone on that current list. Because majority of those people on this list I don't know if they voted for Trump. I don't know. And I think the last co-host, I feel we got lucky. I feel the View viewers got lucky, truthfully. I feel the ladies got lucky, truthfully, because they could have had someone that voted for him, but they didn't. And that's just what it is. And I feel having someone who didn't vote for him representing the conservative voice is not an accurate depiction of the Conservative Party, because it feels like you're just putting someone there who's an actor trying to be conservative, if you know what I'm getting at. And that's just me personally. That's just what I think, and that's how I see it. So I think they needed someone who actually voted for him and actually does vote that way and doesn't change their flip-flop on their opinions either. And so with all that being said and considered, who I think should be the conservative voice on The View, I have a few people. I'm going to actually bring up a list of who I think the front runners are currently, and why I think some of them work and why some of them don't, because I have mixed opinions on this. So for my first pick, first person on this list I have is Michelle Tafoya. And Michelle Tafoya she was a sportscaster for the NFL for God knows, like 30 years and nearly. And she also is a libertarian. She is, she does local radio in Minnesota, and now she's kind of retired. She's retired from the NFL as a sportscaster to go more so in politics. And her audition on The View first was back in November to test those waters a little bit and to see where this is going to take her, if she can do this or not. And she, I think there's a lot of mixed reactions with her mainly from the View fan base. I think, I personally think she does, objectively speaking, the job at where they want to do it. Because here's the thing, realistically, let's use View history here. Elizabeth Hasselbeck lasted 10 years on The View. Meghan McCain lasted 4 years on The View. The next conservative person lasted 3 years on The View, and that was Paula Ferris. The people that only lasted a year were the likable conservatives, like Nicole Wallace, like Jedediah Bila. They lasted a year because there was no conflict coming on the table in a way where they wanted it. They wanted someone with a polarizing, combative personality, because that's what gets people talking and watching this show, and it will give this show an interest. And again, it's not because whether I like that or not. I'm just speaking objectively about this. And that is just the reality of what they are looking for. And that's why we have so many people on this list that are like that. So I think, and I think, again, if they're going with Michelle Tafoya, conservative being the label, I think that just puts them in a box. I think what they're looking for, truthfully, is a libertarian or an independent right-leaning person. I don't think they're looking for a conservative necessarily, because they would have different names in this list. And I don't think with their requirements and the restrictions they have, they can't really do that. So why I think Michelle Tafoya works is because she does have that polarizing personality. However, I don't think she takes it personally. And that's the big key. And that's why Elizabeth lasted 10 years and others didn't. Michelle Tafoya is also old enough to do this job. I think an older woman would be more beneficial in this position personally. I think it would do wonders, and I think she could hold her own with the ladies pretty well. And I don't think the people said that the vibe was very negative and that the women didn't like her. I feel there were times where they were on her case about stuff, but I don't feel it was necessarily, but it was only on the political stuff. When it came to personal stuff, they could all have a good time. I like that Michelle Tafoya could participate in the, even if she got totally grilled in one segment, she would still participate and try to laugh it off into the next segment and just try to have a good time still. And I think that's the key, is not making it personal. And I think if you can really bring that, and you could just bring a different perspective that's not there already, then I think that's what the show needs. And I think that's the key of what they're looking for. And what I also appreciate about her is that she's not from the world of politics. I don't need someone there who is a political expert necessarily. I like someone who is in the everyday person place, because it's table relatable. I like that she's a mother, and she has an interesting background. She's not from the political realm. And I think Brian Tedda said it best, that the best conversations on the table are ones that are not had by people who specialize in politics, but people who don't, and they could really speak to the everyday person more so than having these people who are fathers of politicians or people who ran for government. You know, I get very tired of that type of conversation. It's interesting, of course, but it's not table relatable, if you see what I'm getting at. And I made a whole thread on this if you want to read that, so we could discuss that a little further. So we need people who are table relatable, in my opinion, for this seat. The next person I wanted to talk about was Lauren Wright. I think she is my third favorite of who can do this job, because she was the closest to Megan, actually, truthfully, because she identifies as a conservative. I don't know her opinions on Trump and everything. I don't know if she voted for him or whatnot. I couldn't tell necessarily from the 2 days she was there. The first day, she got completely annihilated by the panel. I felt so bad for her, but she got completely annihilated. But the second day, she was like, listen, I got annihilated, but I'm going to come back twice as hard. And I appreciate that. And I think she really came through her second day to earn herself another place back. However, she brought a whole different perspective to the table that wasn't there before. That wasn't necessarily, I would say, misinformation necessarily, but it was a different way of looking at certain things, especially on COVID. And she didn't cross the line of misinformation. She more so just glossed over what the right is thinking, but she didn't go and saying, this is necessarily fact. She would have said that otherwise, but she said, this is how I see it. And I could tell the women didn't like it. The women weren't feeling her. In fact, I felt that it felt like it was just her on her own island, and then the other four were just having conversation. And I felt they were ignoring her in some cases, because when the last co-host, I felt that same energy where it was just that one person on her own island and then everyone else talking. And I'm just like, I don't like that. Like, it's possible for them to all gel. Like, you know, like I want them to all gel together. And I think Michelle Tafoya made her voice loud enough that she could gel with them. Elizabeth was loud enough, but she could also be a normal, nice person as well, and she could gel with the whole group too afterwards. And they could fight about politics one segment, but then they could all talk about relationships in the next segment. And that was the beauty of Elizabeth Hasselbeck's tenure at The View, I think. And I think that was one of the best things. And I think those are the types of people we need at the table so they can gel with the group. But I will say Lauren Wright did participate, and I appreciate that. She did participate even after those segments. And she did it with a smile, and she did it as professionally as possible. So I give her that. I wouldn't mind seeing her back either. I wouldn't mind that. The next person that we all think are the front runner is Alyssa Farah. I'm going to start by saying I think Alyssa Farah is a nice person. I think in some ways she's too nice for the table, if I'm being honest, because I think she brings she has conservative viewpoints. I mean, she worked for Trump, for God's sake, so let's be real here. I do think she would still be working for Trump if he was in office. That's why I'm like not the most sure about her never Trumper type of trying to be this never Trumper type of Republican. I do think she does agree with his policy, and she's stated that multiple times on the show. And I think, you know, I'm glad she's at least consistent with that, and I'm glad that she at least, you know, sticks to what she believes in, not based off who the person is running. So I think that works for them, and I see why she's being brought back multiple times, because they are looking for a conservative. And I think with her agreeing with Trump's policy helps her. However, my issue with her is that she does not have the polarizing personality that's going to keep her in this job. Let's just put it like this. if she was hired, I would feel she would only last a year, or I would feel she would only last until 2024 election, or like a little past 2024 election. I don't think she would have the necessary staying power because she's A, young, B, she said that if she was willing to be serving in office again, if she was asked to do so, she would do it. So, which if that opportunity came up, I could see her doing that. I don't find her the most table relatable because of her resume with Trump. Like, some of these conversations she brings to the table, I'm like, I can't really relate to it at all. One conversation that was relatable that she said is about her father totally disowning her because of her views on how she called out Trump and everything. I think, yeah, that was interesting. But I think she is, I don't think she would last just because I think I think she's too nice. I think she's really too nice. Something I noticed that she was doing a lot, especially with Sunny, is that anytime she would, so here's the thing, she would disagree, like Jedediah, and I'm going to bring Jed into this, so be prepared. I know there's a lot of Jed stands, but I'm going to just speak objectively here. She would bring it up, but when someone like Sunny came in, or Whoopi, she'd be nodding and say, that's true too, or I could agree with that. We don't, for this voice, you kind of need to stand on your own. You don't need, I felt she was trying to validate everyone else's viewpoints around her and trying to be liked by everyone. And I mean, like, that's courteous and all, and I think that's nice. But on The View, they're not really looking for that necessarily. Yeah. But Alyssa Farah, love the highlighter. You look really gorgeous. I'm sure you would have an amazing career in politics. You should really go out and advocate for Liz Cheney and be part of her campaign, because I'm sure she'll, for the nominee for Republicans. So just go out and do that. Stephanie Grisham. So with Stephanie Grisham, love the eyes, love her, like, love that she spills the tea. Watch it, she doesn't spill the tea, she spills the entire freaking pot. That's what we really got. With Alyssa, we got the tea, but with Stephanie, we got the entire pot, really. Like, let's just be real here. I love that she has loose lips as well, but I think she wouldn't be able to do this job, because I felt that she didn't have enough. I don't want to say this because it's kind of sounds a little harsh, but I don't feel she had the most amount of knowledge on politics in general, because just to be, like, truthful, I think she had a hard time articulating anything that was outside of the Trump's White House. Like, the only thing she seemed to have knowledge on was the Trump White House. Like, she could, and it's because she worked there. Yeah, so I feel they're using her as, like, a pawn to get Alyssa Farah to, like, amp it up a little bit, because I will say on Stephanie's last day there, she brought it. She did bring it, I will say. But it's because people had to push her to that level. I think the ladies liked her. I think the ladies like Stephanie Grisham a lot, actually. But I don't think she could do this job long term speaking. But I really think she's a nice person, because I did send her a message, and I do think she appreciates people who send her nice messages, and she appreciates all sorts of feedback. But I felt bad because her kids were getting involved in some of these people's stupid comments. And if you're out there, please do not comment on other people's kids. Like, you can disagree and not be a fan of someone, but you don't need to bring their kids into it, is what I'm saying. So, but I do think she tried her hardest. She's like a little puppy, you know, like I feel bad for her, but I don't think this job is the best for her in a lot of ways. I also felt it was kind of like an apology to her until the last day I felt she was actually auditioning. The next one that is been around a lot is Tara Setmayer. I think Tara Setmayer, truthfully, would be a great replacement for Ana Navarro if Ana Navarro was to ever leave The View. However, for the 5th seat, it needs to be someone who has a completely different perspective, because Tara's perspective lines up with Anna's perspective in a lot of ways. The never Trumper Republican, which we already have. And I don't think we necessarily need that again. I also think Alyssa Farah would be a great replacement for Anna as well. So like, if Anna was to ever leave, you at least have 2 people for that. But we don't need another never Trumper Republican. And especially with, we don't know what the next election holds really. We don't know who the front runner is for the Republicans. Because because it could be Trump. It could very well be Trump. There's a lot of people that love Trump. But it could also be someone else. Like, what if it's Liz Cheney? Then that changes the whole game for all the people on the list, including Anna. So, I'm not the biggest. She tries. I can see that I saw that back in November. But whenever someone like Sunny calls it out or something, she kind of she's realistic about it. I get it, but that's not what the show, I think, the type of conservative the show is looking for necessarily. And the type of conservative that the show is looking for necessarily, that I think did everything above and beyond, is Lindsey Granger. And I loved Lindsey Granger, and I think a lot of people really did. I think most people who are in the View fan base don't necessarily agree with her, but they could like her. And I think that's important. And I think I would have no issue with Lindsey. I think she could be very well the one, because she seemed to get along with the ladies really well. She seemed to just gel naturally with them. It was natural. It didn't feel forced or anything. With some of these other ladies, I felt they were trying to force themselves in, where Lindsey just did it naturally. She spoke how she felt, and she brought an opposing view of some sort. I don't know necessarily if she's someone that voted for Trump or necessarily, but she brought an opposing view to the table, and she brought that personality, that fiery personality that's going to shake up the table. And she really studied up on her stuff, I felt like, the night before, of what the Republicans are saying. And that's what that voice needs to do. That's what the 5th seat is all about. And she did it with a smile, and she kept going and going and going with all of them. And I think she brought, not only that, I felt everyone's A game was brought to the table. Because when they have someone who's challenging, who's educated, who knows what they're talking about, the rest of the ladies really have to study up. And sometimes when they have these other people on that don't know what they're talking about necessarily, or they're not the brightest in the tool shed necessarily, they don't have to try. They can just talk with their same points. And I felt that's a big thing with the last co-host, is the last co-host had a polarizing personality, but she didn't get them thinking enough. And I like that Lindsey Granger could get them thinking about this. And I also appreciate that about Condoleezza Rice, is that Condoleezza Rice would also get them to think about what they're saying. I think that's a really great thing to have, and a strong element to have in the show. And when a co-host can bring that extra element, not to make, and it's not because she could win an argument necessarily, it's to make the table better. And I think when you can make your other teammates on the table even better and stronger too, I think that's a huge thing. And I think that shows you add a lot to the table, because I could tell Whoopi usually kind of just sits back and just says what she wants, but she was bringing out stuff, or we haven't since Elizabeth Hasselbeck days. And as a viewer, I just enjoyed her. I liked her personality overall. I think she was fun. She could be fun, but she could also give us what we need. And this is what the girls need, okay? Like, we've been wanting this for so long. And I think out of all this list, my number one, I would say, is Lindsay Granger. My number two is Michelle Tafoya. And then my number three, I would say, is Lauren Wright, but I would like to see her again, just because I'm kind of iffy on that. As well, she didn't just have chemistry with the women, whereas Lindsay Granger could gel with the women, if you know what I mean. And I heard she was also, people that went to the audience said that that the women liked her behind the scenes. They could have a really heated discussion, but then they could be really good off screen. And then also there's this clip from her show Daily Blast Live, and how her co-host reacted, and they thought she did great. Like, even one of the co-hosts there said that, Lindsay's going to be leaving Daily Blast Live. She's a former Daily Blast Live co-host, because now she's joining The View. So even when her co-host at that show felt it, that she could be the one.
Sir, Lindsay Granger, everybody.
Thank you.
It's becoming a theme where I introduce you, but this time I really have to introduce you. This is former DBL host. No, I'm just kidding.
Stop.
But fresh off The View, Lindsay Granger for the past few days. I watched you. You did incredible. The way you held your own with those strong women up there. You're a strong woman yourself, but really great job.
And first, I want to start Whoopi Goldberg is an idol, right?
Yeah.
Joy Behar's been on the show since the beginning. These are people that I watched growing up, and I was lucky to have a seat at that table and have a discussion. But I would not be able to have any of those. And let me say, Sonny and Sarah also kept me on my toes and kept me sharp as a sword. But I wouldn't be able to have those conversations without sparring with you as intensely as we did, and then still being friends and having a beer together afterwards, without Al showing me how to laugh at the end of a really tough conversation, and without Tori really just riding me, like disagreeing, and then we both can just breathe at the commercial break and still go out and get a drink. And so that is not something that somebody knows how to do normally, but unless I did it with you guys, I can do it with them. So I just want to thank you guys for really sharpening my sword and showing me that I shouldn't be afraid to have dialogue with anybody, because that's what America needs to do. We need to know how to disagree with stuff, be any skin color, be from any background, and it be okay that we have a diverse viewpoint, but still be able to get a drink.
I couldn't agree with you more. And because the View has an audience, I'm going to applaud that.
We got an audience here. We got Kelly.
Before we get into our thing, I did want to mention it because you did a great job of it. I don't want to go on and on, but of getting your opinion in there, right? Because it's tough to get into a new show. But how did the applause affect you? Because I know if we had applause here, it would make the show a little bit different.
Dude, she said stop clapping.
There was a point when I said, don't clap for that. And, I got in a little bit of trouble for that. I'm not gonna
I don't like it. Oh.
But it was like kind of like clapping, and it was like, I felt like it's an audience, and they love somebody already. They love Sunny, so they might say, she said something like, oh, the sky is blue. It's like,
I can't stand it.
Excuse me, but I need to learn how to that's what happens in life. You said the claps are like social media people, right? For you, it's like you get tons of applause, but what does it mean for you? If you stood by your conviction and really feel that way and know there's no malice in what you're saying, stand firm in it. And that's how I feel.
Dig it.
I think she has a really good chance, and I hope we see her again. I definitely bring her back, not just for 2 days, bring her back a full week. Like, we need a full week of her, okay? We really do, and I hope The View really goes with that, because I also found her very table relatable. I like that she didn't have a super political background either. Michelle Tafoya as well didn't have a super political background either, and I could connect with that better. I didn't feel like they were going to go run off and run for election or something, or serve the next vice president or something like that. Like, I like that they didn't have any of that type of background. They were table relatable, and I think that's in the season 25 of the show. Barbara's vision was to make all the women to be table relatable at home, so that women at home could relate to the women, and people at home could relate to them. And they're supposed to be having a conversation that happens in their everyday lives. We don't need a big name for this voice. We just need someone who can do the job. And here's the thing, Gretchen Carlson was a big name. And so Mia Love was like the governor of Utah or something. And they couldn't do this. They just couldn't. And that's why they haven't been asked back. So truthfully, the unknown people that we didn't know about, Michelle Tafoya and Lindsay Granger, they were the best. And it's because they are unknown and because they can really speak to the everyday person. And I think especially for the conservative voice where they want to be, where they're more traditional with stuff, where they're more old school with stuff, that person needs to be someone of the everyday people. And Elizabeth Hasselbeck lasted for 10 years because she was that. She was that voice. And why so many of the conservatives they had prior failed is because look at their backgrounds. They already were known people, most of them. Some of them were known people. Some of them had known fathers and stuff. And they weren't relatable, and I could not connect with them. And with these women, I feel I could connect a lot better with them. I don't agree with them on everything necessarily, and that's okay, and I love that. And you know why I love The View is because I can relate. I can disagree with people on the panel, not just like the fifth chair or something, but any of the women. I don't agree with all the women every day, or sometimes I will agree with them on everything every day. And I love that. I love having a show that gets me to think like that and gets me to see a different perspective outside my own. And I'm an independent, so I love seeing perspective. So that's my take on the fifth chair at The View. That went on a lot longer than I expected. The last thing I wanted to talk about today is that there was an article that came out that Wendy Williams is going to try to sue Sherri Shepherd. I know Wendy has been calling certain people out that have been dealing with her finances lately, and she's trying to put herself back in, but she doesn't seem to be making it back. I do question the people around Wendy because there is a lot of information regarding her bank that just like froze her. I don't know the full details on it necessarily, but I do think she should not be in a conservatorship. I don't think that's for someone. I don't think the conservatorship is the best thing for people because there seems to be an ongoing pattern of abuse that happens within these conservatorships. Because look at Britney Spears and what she revealed last year, and why did Amanda Bynes just the other day end her conservatorship? We have to ask those questions because usually with these conservatorships, that means you're putting the money into someone that is deciding all your personal and financial decisions. And I don't think Wendy Williams is the person to necessarily be in that situation. She may have some issues. She definitely has some issues that she needs to work on herself, but a conservatorship is not the answer to keeping her tame. That actually makes you more crazy because you're being controlled by someone else pretty much, and you cannot make decisions for yourself. So how would you feel about living like that every day? If you're a super old person that's about to die, of course that something like that may work for it, but there's this case, especially with celebrities being in these conservatorships, where they're being taken advantage of, and it's not okay. So I don't think Wendy Williams necessarily needs a conservatorship. However, going back to the topic is, I think, first off, that lawsuit is dead as water because Wendy, girl, you did not show up to work for months after months after months, and you guys had to delay your show multiple times, and that costs lots of money for the studio and everything. And you have to think about the production people. That costs them as well because some of them don't make a crazy salary per year. Some of them, they need this job just to feed their kids and everything and feed their family and put food on the table. So there's a lot of damage done with that, first of all. I also think Sherri Shepherd worked her ass off to get there, and I think nobody deserves it more than Sherri Shepherd to be her to have their own show. And I think she definitely like deserved it because she guest co-hosted, and Sherri Shepherd knows when to get a job. When she first came on The View the first time back in April 2005, she was like 9 months pregnant. She was about to have the baby, and she had to be wheelchair onto The View to guest co-host. Like, that is so iconic, and that just shows how passionate Sherri Shepherd is to get a job. And I see why she earned a chair at The View and lasted for a very long time there, too. She earned everything she worked for. And Wendy did as well, but when you get to a point where you're not going to show up to work, don't be surprised when you get fired, because, girl, you were just kind of asking to be fired at that point. And I'm not surprised that her show's getting axed for Sherri's show to replace it. Because her goodbye show was Sherri's hello show, because Sherri guest co-hosted and guest co-hosted and guest co-hosted and showed the producers over there and did the production company that she could do this and that she's committed to do this. And for that, Sherri earned that job. So I don't feel Wendy should be suing Sherri Shepherd necessarily. I think in lots of ways, this could be a lot worse, because honestly, Sherri taking over Wendy's show is a good thing for Wendy, because it's time for Wendy, because Wendy seems to be deteriorating from doing this every single day. And I think it's brought a toll on her health, and Wendy needs to focus on Wendy now. And that's the most important thing, I think. So, I think that this lawsuit is not going to be happening. I don't think it's going to go through. I'd be surprised if it goes through, but we'll see if it goes through. Anyways, I hope you guys enjoyed this first episode of The View History. We're going to talk about various topics coming up, but I hope you love to deep dive and thrive with me. I never deep dive and thrive this much, but I enjoyed it. And I think at first I was nervous, but I think by the end of it, I really got into it and didn't expect to go on so long, but I've just so much to say. I cannot stop talking. Anyways, I hope you all have a wonderful day and take a little time to enjoy The View History.